OOCS into a wider galaxy, Part 181. The buzz on the spin. The fact of the matter is that he can see us and control himself so well that even the instinctive reactions of spotting something are not present. There is no safe way to observe him without being observed back. Furthermore, what we've overheard implies that at least one of the station can perceive us too. I know. This is exactly what we came here to learn. How many people can just casually perceive us, and what kind of security risk are they? I'm going to say big because they're reporting our presence. We need to virus bomb Thia's place and flee. Because an electronic information attack is going to prevent the people from forming memories or drawing logical conclusions. There's more than one type of virus bomb. Because a station of murdered souls isn't going to draw even more attention. Not to mention there are so many variances in species and vulnerabilities that there is literally no virus that could get them all without another group countering it, to say nothing of the risk of viral mutations and having it spread back to us, both digitally and biologically. But, no, as your superior officer and head of our little incursion, I am putting a veto on this right now. Nothing is less subtle or more obvious than an agent deciding to burn everything down to cover their tracks. We are not ready. Even if you completely destroy all evidence, we were here, the collateral from it alone is still an enormous clue. And unless you've forgotten, one piece of evidence is the testimony and eyewitness account of a combatant that is training themselves to feed entire battle fleets with a piece of sharpened metal. We don't have the munitions to deal with a force like that. And that is just one of the two individuals we now know can perceive us. The other is older than our species and routinely kills creatures that we would require artillery fire to ward off for sport, and has had a number of children equal to a full tenth of our entire population. To say nothing of her more or less officially co-opting an entire sector of this station that specializes in growing advanced ship components and materials with biologically modified plants. They have more efficient computer hard drives literally growing on trees in her garden. A garden tended to by professional killers and mercenaries of a dizzying array of species who all call each other sibling and her mother. Biologically, no less. Am I missing anything so far? There is no answer. Look, you pink idiot. I understand that you don't like being caught out, and the urge to stab them now and dispose of the bodies later is huge. But if you don't start thinking things through the whole way, then you never be promoted. I just want us safe, ma'am. I get that, I really do. But picking fights with a creature that would consider metaphorically picking our bones out of its teeth the harder part of dealing with us isn't wise, especially when it clearly knows where we are. You don't know that it's that strong. Have you not been reading the supplemental reports I've been publishing? She asks, and her underling looks confused. She sighs. Okay, read the ones labeled Subject Scion, Subject Mirror, and Subject Mother. Can you not just summarize? We need to keep a close watch on. You will not be permitted any sleep cycles, and I will override your food privileges to Nutrio rations if you do not. That's cruel and unusual. No. What one of the many people you're proposing we provoke does to their enemies is cruel and unusual. This is simple discipline, she says before sighing. And now I'm going to use your little screw-up to take the emergency powers required to do what we should have been doing for a long time. What do you mean? We resemble hybrids of two separate common species, and the galaxy is a wide place. I have a false ID ready. I'm going into the station. But what about, I have clothing too. You sit down and take a read the reports like a good soldier. They're not required reading. We're dealing with a threat level so high that if High Command tells me to engage without acknowledging that they're sending me on a suicide run, I'm going to simply desert. You wouldn't. Look, girl, I understand that you may think we older gals from the Liberation are old biddies at times, but we're not stupid. I know when we're outmatched. The first charge that survived received a promotion to corporal. Those that held back were named sergeant, and I was called lieutenant because I was screaming they were idiots. Our training makes us skilled, but it doesn't make us smart. And you think just walking among them is wise? When sneaking behind them isn't evading notice and potentially provoking them? Yes. They will know of us. They already know of us, and while stealth is wealth, it's not the beginning and end of all things. For all that we're trying to avoid the gaze of our enemies, There's the simple fact that our greatest enemy of all knew of us before we did, she says. Now get to reading. I'm heading out. I'm going to report this. Do so. She tells the girl, and that brings her up short. So why did you feel the need to buy those? Harold asks as Yavra adjusts the shiny sheathed sword she has tied to her back. I don't know, she's kind of talked me around to it, Javra says comfortably. Never been a preaching girl, but taking care of the family is a good way to start. A pity she's already got a family, although I suppose it's to be expected of a Gravid priestess, Jiria notes. And thank goodness I don't have to put up with the madness of dealing with where that line of thought leads. Observer Wu states. Is it really that close, sir? Harold asks. My cousin would have murdered to have skin so clear or a figure like that. But beyond that, and the snick traits, almost one for one. Although my cousin tends to speak in a higher pitch, Observer Wu answers. Makes one wonder why we don't run into it more often. One of Wu's bodyguards states, it's mostly because you're looking for man faces and there are so few men. Also, you're getting distracted by the non-human details in the women around us, Harold says before reaching up and plucking Javra out of the air. Take another look at her. Ignore the glowing yellow eyes and dark blue skin. Look at the bone structure and cast of things. What does it say? Yeah, what does my face say to you? Javra challenges as Observer Wu pauses, looks, and then frowns. No way, you're Nigerian young woman, he says after a moment, and she sticks her tongue out at him before taking off and fluttering up above them. Okay, point taken. There are only so many functional configurations of a flatter face like ours, so we're going to see familiar appearances. I wouldn't call my face flat, Javra notes, tapping her nose. Compared to races with more a muzzle on them, it's pretty flat, Harold notes. And compared to me and mine, your face is nearly caved in, Patras mocks. Hey, I could clobber you for that. If you're still pissy when we get to Sector 2, then I'll take you up on it in the dueling pits. Patras challenges. Really? Hey, big guy, she's my girl. No nosing in, Harold warns him. Patras looks to Harold and sees he's being friendly, and then smiles wide. You know what? I think that is a fun challenge. I would like to see how you guys rumble. Hey, no, me first. I want to fight first. Once we get a chance, we're heading to Sector 2 and venting our bloodlust, Harold says, and there's a slight cheer. Probably best not to mention that in the next Gravid branch. They're not on the level of ever-birthers. But the Orthodox mothers are very traditional, Patrace says. One thing that confuses me is how are they getting on in a station like this? Sure, it's not like people are being stabbed at every corner, but there's a great deal more danger here than in other parts of the galaxy. Do these Orthodox mothers or ever-birthers have some kind of martial tradition? No, but they don't push them out either, Patras says as he looks down the block after they leave the festival area, and then indicates a building with an almost Gothic-style architecture. Is that a common architecture style? Yes, most species try to have something where it's structurally sound but incredibly ornate in places of worship. You should see the Synthetic Ascension Temple. If you can perceive in the electromagnetic spectrum, it's downright beautiful, Patras says. Sounds like you're considering them, Harold notes as they walk along. The sound baffling of the sector means that they're already almost entirely out of earshot of the festival going on behind them. No, but I get them. They want to be more, so they literally make themselves more. Perfectly understandable. Not tempted to upgrade? First, I need to find the limits of my current grade. Otherwise, my upgrade might be a downgrade, Patras says casually, and then all of a sudden, Harold just stops with a baffled look on his face. The group wordlessly follows his gaze, and there is a long-necked alien woman, resembling a Liak in general shape and a cloak and in demeanor. She just sorts of blends, despite a good chunk of her height being taken up by her neck and prominent hood. Where are her markings? Harold asks after a few moments. The woman doesn't seem to be paying any attention to them at all. She's talking on a communicator and looking the other way. But Harold isn't fooled in the slightest. The nearby window is reflective in such a way that he looks her straight in the eyes through it. One of our mystery girls, in jeans and a sweater with pistols at her side? Observer Wu asks. And she's watching us through the reflection. Clearly they notice that we, Harold begins to say when she turns and looks directly at them. Well, you can clearly hear me. Are you and yours willing to talk? I know you're not the one spotted earlier, or the one of the Soben Ride troublemakers. Excuse me, why are you staring at me? She calls over. Not working, Harold calls back. Try something else. What's not working? What's going on? She asks. She's bullshitting us, sir. Want me to take her? Harold asks Observer Wu. What? She asks in seeming shock. Are you sure? Positive. There is no species with their profile in the galactic registry. I've looked, called in favors, and looked again. 200 man-hours from thousands of professional researchers each found nothing. A sample from her would answer a huge number of questions. You have no idea? No, but I have many people looking into who and what you are. Your faces are known, all faces I've seen. But there is nothing? She asks, walking up and abandoning her farce of a conversation. She pockets the communicator and makes no effort to hide. You do not know the name of my species, dietary requirements, or anything? Observer Wu gives them an odd look as Harold and everyone else start to stand around them. Patra speaks first. Your people were last seen around a terrorist site on Sobenride. Do you have similar intents around the station? We're a cautious people, she answers. That was not a no, Harold says, and she puts her hands in her pockets and then leans forward to slowly bring her face down to his level. A forked tongue flicks out and she tastes the air. No fear, just control. And sex. Lots and lots of sex. Are you humans really always on? Puberty to impotent, he answers. What about your kind? They not doing it? Her eye ridges go up and then she smirks. Bold, very bold. She says, standing all the way up. You are a man who would fight a god. Multiple times. I've only seen the one fight. The rest were informal. He replies, so why do you pluck your feathers? What? She asks. Today is the closest look I've had at one of your kind. You can grow feathers. Not as many as the small manes that Cloaken can get. But they're there. That eye ridge should be a bit brighter. I don't. Holdover then? From an ancestor? He asks and she clams up. Oh, come now, we were having a lovely conversation. This was a mistake. That depends entirely on your goal. This could be a big breakthrough, a huge chance. So the question is, what do you want? Not something you can give. I disagree. Name it, Harold says with a smile. OOCS Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 182, The Buzz on the Spin. There is no answer for a few moments and Harold sighs. Perhaps the crowds are a little overwhelming. I understand, Observer Wu. Perhaps it would be best if you kept going. The two men make eye contact and then there is a nod. Try not to scare off the delicate little thing, beloved, Jiria says, giving him a kiss. He returns and the group departs. He steps forward, puts an arm around her shoulders, and starts leading her off. Now then, ma'am, you have questions and I have questions. Let's both get our answers somewhere more comfortable, he says, and she seems taken aback, which leads into his assumption that she is potentially part of an artificial species and has had little to no interaction with men. Think she'll work? Uma asks Jiria, who considers. Well, spy work and espionage are important. Information is worth easily 10 times its weight in munitions. More considering knowledge doesn't actually weigh anything, but she seems to have conflicting loyalties. And a species with so much neck shown clearly is vulnerable to decapitations. Are you seriously thinking of having that woman brought on my ship as one of your sister wives? Observer Wu asks. Isn't that more Captain Rangi's ship? I can still tell him to throw people out, and I will. Observer Wu retorts, and there's a pause. She's still a potential hostile. Potential and an enemy subverted is far better than an enemy laid at your feet, Jiria states. You follow the war goddesses of the primal faith, don't you? Patras asks. I trace my lineage to one, actually. Lady Thessalia, Jiria says. Oh, they'll want you to visit then, Patras notes. Probably, Jira notes. Do you think he's actually going to seduce her? He'll either come back with her contact information, her corpse, or her heart. Literally or metaphorically. Either way, he's not leaving without it, Jiria notes. I say we get a potential spy mistress, Dumaya says. I say he kills her, Uma remarks. You putting coin on that or just words? Dumaya asks. How much are we talking here? So how about we start with names, or at least what you'd rather I call you? Hey, you're going to get information out of that even if I give you total nonsense, aren't you? I've already gotten something out of the fact you recognize the potential trap. I am not going to lie. I am gaining an enormous amount of information out of you, and there is no way out of it. But running is your worst option, because at this range I will chase. Are you always this aggressive? I need to differentiate myself from the original. This is one way I do it. He baffles with bullshit. I overwhelm the opposition instead. He remarks with a grin. Original? You're a clone? She asks, and he nods. One of many, many, many clones. I was just one of the first recovered and the only one I know of that has had a total mental download from the original. Gave me a hell of an identity crisis, he admits. Did you undergo the same? It wasn't the shit. It was the Gavali Empire that made me. He admits, giving her more information to distract her from the fact he just forced more information out of her by sheer reflex. Nope, not biting on that one. That's fair. Is there a reason why your stealth suits are so minimalist? If I'm sneaking, I prefer having no skin exposed at all. Oh, surely you can put it together. So it is the hoods. Good to know. The markings must only activate when only in active use. Are there further designs to allow different protections or techniques? Harold says, and she pauses. Oh, come on, it's too big a weakness for a designed soldier unless it's bait to attack the strongest point. My best armor has the emblem of the Undaunted directly over its hardest points, drawing the eye and making people aim for the worst possible shots. I think the best answer is not to be hit at all. I agree, but any plan that relies on the poor performance of your opponents is a bad plan, Harold remarks, and there's a pause between them. So why is it you here with me now and not the other one? She was a brighter shade of pink and... I'm not pink. You objectively are pink. Not as bright as the other one, but still pink. I'm a lighter shade of red. You're pink, he answers. Listen, wise guy, the only reason I don't push you away with a hiss is because the locals would start staring. Huh, how about some more space then? I see a cafe over there. Care for a treat? You're going to figure out more from be based on what I order, and if I have you order for me, whether I eat or not will tell you biological information for my species. Yes, but more importantly, I want to know why your operational security is so high. I don't need exact details. I just want you to confirm or deny a few statements, he says, guiding her in. Within a minute, they're sitting opposite of each other with a small table between. Both of them have a water to start with. She's playing it smart. So can you confirm or deny that you yourself are a middling to low-ranking member of your organization? I confirm it, she says before holding up her hand. Can you confirm or deny that your species and the organizations born of it were confined into the pocket of the galaxy known as cruel space until recently? She asks. I can confirm, he replies. Can you confirm or deny culpability in the terrorist attack on Sobin Reed, wherein I, as well as my wives, served as combatants on the side of the locals? She pauses, considers, looks at him, and he sighs. A confirmation, then? Yes. I am extremely curious as to what those actions gained you and yours, and what your preferred outcome in that scenario was, but it's your turn. I'm not certain how much you're going to pass certain information. So before I ask my next question, I must ask you to confirm or deny that you are recording this conversation and intending to report back to the Undaunted. Confirmed, both of them. I operate under loose leash protocols, which has several degrees, making me effectively a free agent that is nonetheless loyal to and reporting to the Undaunted. Really? How free of an agent are you? I'm fully paid and supplied, but also fully expected to garnish and expand my resources wherever I please. They also rarely tell me where to go and often work around where I am at the time. This is pretty easy so far as the inevitable is going from undaunted location to undaunted location, meaning that if there was something they wanted done there, it's likely already done. Then what are they getting out of you? A roving force multiplier and problem solver. There's also the fact that I notice things other Undaunted don't. You girls, for example. And you think we might be valuable to the Undaunted? Why not? You're good at stealth and we have an entire intelligence division for a reason. She has nothing to say to that, so he orders a mix of herbivorous and carnivorous finger food. More bait? She asks. Hunger. I have appetite enough for 3 or 4 others. Feel free to have some. It's just bait to see what I can digest. And if you know it's bait, is it still bait? Yes, of course. You'd be surprised how many people answer no to that, Harold says with a smirk as the snacks arrive. He pops a few from each selection into his mouth and nods as the flavors mix as he hoped. You're still gathering information. You've refused to eat even after seeing me eat and are erring on the side of caution. You could match what I eat, and while you would have an unpleasant time later, nothing here is poisonous to the wide scale. But you're so careful that you're unwilling to give even that away, meaning that you have either personally screwed up OPSEC in a big way before, or your entire people have been traumatized in such a manner and are instinctively hiding, he says and watches her reaction. The latter, not the former. You're dangerous, she says. Yes. What do you hope to gain? Information, potentially an ally. An ally? We've attacked an ally of yours. And we can smooth that over, especially if we know why, he says, and she narrows her eyes. How interesting. The thing usually used as a mitigating factor is what you're more careful about, meaning your organization wants something that we would find unacceptable. But the tightening of your features and clear aggravation means it's something you feel strongly about. Are you the only one? Are you a patriot? A big patriot? Stop, she orders him, and he holds up his hands. Your turn then. 2 centuries and 57 years ago. What organizations founded at that time are you aware of and on good terms with? She asks, and he raises his eyebrows. A very good question. One I don't have an immediate answer for, but I can get one within the hour at most, Harold says before thinking. So you and yours have been maligned by an organization a touch over 2.5 centuries of age. This has made you incredibly cautious and unwilling to work with others, even to the point of trying to almost subconsciously sabotage any and all efforts of getting outside help. She's very, very still. This tells me that your malefactors were once something trusted, something you may even have relied on, and without it, you're still lost, but are unwilling to even entertain the idea of anything having that level of power over you again. You are uncomfortably good at this. If I were my mentor, you'd have given this all to me willingly and be working for me by now. But I'd like to think I'm doing all right, Harold replies. That is terrifying. A good chunk of his life story has been outright dismissed as fiction, and that's the parts that have been released to the public, because much of it is still considered dangerous to show. Think on that. She does. She visibly does. Then she stands up. I need to use the ladies' room. 15 minutes before I do something drastic, he says, and she nods. See you soon, then. She walks away and he simply relaxes. The game is still in motion, but the implication that he's far from the best in his field will light a fire under her and push her to make a decision, meaning he either tracks her down and starts ripping out computer files or has information volunteered. Oh, welcome children to our church. We're between services at the moment. I was just sprucing up my sermon. Is there something I can help you with? The minister asks, and Observer Wu nods. She's a felly in an outfit that's closer to the nun side of a not-nun getup. Yes, there is. I am Observer Wu from Earth. I am here to learn all that I reasonably can about the Gravid faith in order to bring an understanding of it back to the homeworld in cruel space. I would like to hear about your denomination of the Gravid truth. You've heard the truth? I had it explained to me by priestess leading the celebrations of Saint Twinblade today. Ah, yes, she does good work. The Church of the Guardian Mother can be a little quick to jump to conclusions, but are excellent to have around, especially if disaster may visit you and yours. She then pauses and looks at Observer Wu again. Are you somehow a relation of hers? You have a great many facial features in common. No, but I have a cousin that with a bit of makeup and some prosthetics could pass as the priestess. I see, but just to be clear, could you tell me in your own words what you believe the Gravid truth is? The simple observation that without another generation, a society fails. That without children, there is no future, and the basic fact that those children need to not only be born, but protected, taught, and indeed loved as well. Precisely, the various denominations are merely disagreements on what to focus on. Right, and what I want to know is what does the Orthodox Gravid faith focus on? Observer Wu asks. Have a seat. I do my best work speaking from the podium, she says, standing up and tucking away her communicator. I prefer to stand. The benches are actually quite comfortable, but if you wish to stand, I will not stop you," she says as she steps behind the podium and puts her hands on it. Now, Orthodox Gravid, very easily underestimated as a faith, as a belief, as a way of life. But just because it's underestimated doesn't mean it's not valid. In fact, how valid our beliefs are part and parcel with how underestimated we are. For what we focus the most upon is simply the act of being a parent. What we advocate for is so universal that many women see it as almost silly to need a reminder. But we are here to teach those that do forget what is important a very basic truth in addition to the Gravid truth. And that is, Observer Wu asks, knowing she's been prompting him to this. He can appreciate the sales pitch if nothing else. That you are responsible for your children. You brought them into the world, you must guide and guard them. Coupled with the Gravid truth, it is a clear line of responsibility and duty to every woman to have the next generation and to guide it. Just having the child is merely the first step. So many are so focused on the idea of having many children, but each child is a gift, and they must treat them as such. If you have no child of your own to guard and guide, then to the classroom should you head to teach and protect. We are all responsible in crafting the future. And what of those who do not? Those who have no children or intention to have children? Observer Wu challenges, and for a moment there is a frown. They are failing their ancestors, themselves and their society, she says. Could you explain that, please? Observer Wu asks. OOCS, Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 183, The Buzz on the Spin. Failing? In what way are they failing themselves, their ancestors, or their society? Observer Wu challenges. They fail themselves by denying one of the most fulfilling and self-empowering experiences that any man or woman can ever experience. They fail their ancestors by ending the line that leads down to them. The gift of the primals in our lengthened lives do not discount this, merely delays the consequences of family lines suddenly being extinguished. And while a single line being lost won't destroy an entire society, such behavior and patterns have a terrible tendency to spread and grow, leading to horrific population crashes. Although, to be fair, it's rarely a case of someone simply deciding to not have a family. On some level, everyone wants one, but people get distracted and get other priorities overwhelming their day-to-day life. You can see it in other aspects of life too. There's so much work to do that you put off sleeping for an hour or two to catch everything up and then wake the next day feeling awful. Then you don't work so well the next day and things spiral out of control until you make an active choice to do better. I think your metaphor has run away from you, ma'am, Observer Wu says. Oh, but it hasn't. So many people think, oh, I'll put off being a parent until later. Oh, I'll do it later, I have time. I have time. What a dangerous trinity of words. We have time until we don't, and we need to get started on our legacies, on our futures and destinies as soon as possible. Should it consume your life? Of course not. But if you don't make room for what matters in life, then you never accomplish anything of worth. Sure, you can gather coin and accolades. You can even make a great deal of both. But as is being proven time and time and time again in the galaxy, long-lived is not immortal. Death still lives with us. If you want something to survive past you, you need something beyond yourself you've given to the galaxy. She concludes. But family lines can be wiped out too. Children can die as well. Nothing is perfect, but if you make no effort on your own part to preserve something, it becomes all that much easier for it to be lost. She answers, it's rarely one big movement that destroys something like a person, society, or family. It's 1,000 small concessions to entropy. I'll do it tomorrow. I'm not ready. I can put it off, and as said before, the most insidious of all, I have time. The truth of the matter is, we don't. A bomb could go off in this room that none of us are aware of, and then all that follows us are the children we have had and the legacy we have given them. So tell me, Observer Wu, if everyone in this room were to die right now, would you have something left? I'm surprised you came back. I expected to follow you to your little ship. No, you know I left and returned, she says, and he nods. How good are you? Good on a scale that a galactic-level military that prides itself on the best of the best acknowledges me as too valuable to let leave but too powerful to contain. So while they try to figure out what they want out of me, they let me wander. Really? I'm a huge security risk, too well trained to be expected anywhere else but in intelligence, but a nightmare to properly incorporate due to the fact that I have the biometric patterns of a high-ranking member of the same branch. A lot of the security goes right down the toilet among many, many other concerns. Psychological among them. Psychological? I'm able to separate myself from him fairly well, but last time I saw my nieces and nephews, it hurt, because I remembered them as my daughters and sons, he admits and then grins. But you would understand, wouldn't you? You're a clone too. Training download, mechanical movements that your body isn't fully catching up to. If you think that not you, you're older. The others I spotted, they use too much axiom in their movements, you use less. This tells me that you and others like you have a training download, and the automatic compensation is strong. That's normal in downloaded training and memories. The body doesn't match up to what the mind thinks it's capable of, and until a balance is reached, excess axiom is brought in to shore up the difference. I wasn't sure until I met you, but the others are younger, more freshly copied or cloned. You just love digging in deep, don't you? She asks and he nods. Fine, yes. I am second generation. The others you've seen have been either fourth or fifth. I was created to test chemical weapons and chemical tolerances against my species, humans. I'm guessing you and yours are more weapons? And if we are, let us assume that all your assumptions are completely correct, and the only mistakes you've made are in inconsequential details. What do you and yours plan to do with or about us and ours? My assumptions also place a high degree of learned and instinctual paranoia, making you exceeding difficult to work with. Are we also assuming I somehow bypass this? He asks. Yes, assume you get to do whatever you want with us for the sake of this question. Assume that if there's some form of treachery or taking advantage, then we only learn about it far, far too late to actually do anything about it. What do you want? She asks. I learn what you and yours want, and then I use it as payment to bring you on side. The undaunted are expanding. You'd be welcome among us if you'd be willing to work. And then, recruitment, she says after a few moments. Recruitment, he replies. It's not a bad fate to have a steady paycheck, good fire support, and better friends. Even if you're friends with one of our supposed victims, the fun thing about friends arguing or fighting is that you can get them to stop. Is Sobenride important to you and yours? Yes. In a manner it can be no other world. I'm afraid so. Almost a diplomatic impasse. Almost. It most certainly is one. No. Anything you need on a planet you can get elsewhere except for one thing, which is location. Assuming it is the location of Sobenrid, that is important. This means that you have something you want safe that is located nearby, and you either want to control some kind of easy access point to it, or you simply want an area around it, clear of all potential hostiles. I will not tell you which one it is. It doesn't matter which one it is. This is a problem best solved diplomatically. I doubt you want members of your species to be injured or to die in battle. We are willing to sacrifice for what we need. Willing is one thing, eager is another. Do not be eager to die when there are other ways, Harold warns her. There are ways to win wars without fighting. Oh, like what? Like canceling. If a war isn't needed, then you find other ways. A man married to the line of a war goddess preaching peace, she demands. I'm preaching to avoid unnecessary war. The key term is unnecessary. From what I can gather, and please tell me I'm wrong if I am, you and your people have been wronged. You have been wronged terribly and do not want to be seen on a large scale. You value your privacy, your safety, and your ability to make your own choices. Correct? Correct. Good. Now, one of those three needs is for some reason conflicting with a species very friendly to the undaunted. That, being the Apuk and the main concern, is related to the world of Sobenrid, a longtime colony world of the Apuk. So much so that there are royal and noble family lines upon Sobenrid that stretch back further than the entire existence of your species, likely by a large margin. Correct. Are you capable of moving to a more private and easily defensible location and avoid the possible conflict with the Apuk? No. Is that no as in it is physically impossible? Or no as in doing so would be incredibly difficult, expensive, and extremely likely to fail? The second. Therefore it is possible. He says, and she frowns at him, I'm not trying to underplay the capabilities of your own people, but we are different people. What is impossible or unthinking for one species may be commonplace for another. Or even just another culture might casually perform acts that their neighbors think borderline supernatural or utterly unreasonable. And you're proposing you and yours would just do that? For free? Free? Hardly, but some prices are easily paid. With what? Loyalty? Allegiance? Would you want us to be your little invisible necking dolls to cuddle up against without anyone noticing? More likely you'll end up in intelligence. Spies are great to have. We want more of them, he says, and she stops. Low-profile patrols and reinforcements are also amazing. Invisible armed backup? Yes, please. I'll take as much of that as I can get, to say nothing of your computer science abilities if that AI that was captured off Sobin Reed is any example. Bloated but thorough and vicious. So no matter what we lose our privacy and our independence, you're losing it either way. Your attack on Sobin Reed has consequences. Right now the Apuk are looking for you, and if they don't find you, then they will ask for help. They're proud, not stupid, and seeing as how the Apuk and the Undaunted are on very good terms, they're going to ask us. Then they learn everything I know, including what I've learned now, which means your big secret, whatever it is, gets exposed, and not by friendlies, and most certainly not on your terms. You're right, she concedes as she shows how flexible her neck is by lowering it into her hands while her elbows rest on the table. We're running out of options and soon we'll be out of time. So you need to tell your higher-ups that they need to make a choice, and soon before one is made for them. This is the stuff of nightmares. Literal nightmares. I've had them about this exact scenario. I'm sorry, Harold says before leaning back. You have a few years at most. The Apuk are a proud people that like seeing fast results. But their ruler has a very long-term style of thinking, and the species as a whole has adapted well to extended lifespans. It'll take at least a year and a half before the more impatient Apuk start demanding they get some help to find answers. At most you have 5. Standing on our own shouldn't be this hard, she says. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. He answers. I would. I have had a family, Observer Wu says, and the minister nods from her podium. And so would I. So would several in this room. There is no true guarantee to anything, but we have hedged our bets and assured that our societies and values will pass on. It's not magic, it's not some divine intervention, but the basic truth being put into practice. The Gravid truth. We must have the next generation, and it is everyone's duty. But we have all affected lives beyond ourselves. People we've helped, things we've taught, lives we've saved. Do they not matter? They do, but they don't carry all of your aspects. The people you've helped will go on to help others, carrying that with them into the society. The people you've taught will go on to teach others, carrying that with them as well. To say nothing of the people you've saved and inspired to go forth and save others. But your children will carry all 3. And if someone has been given all 3 of those parts of yourself, are they not your child in all but blood? Are they not family you have raised in all but name? They are. But there is so much more to life than merely having children. Maybe, but if you don't value something so needed, so intrinsic to life itself, then what do you value? What worth is life if you do not bring more into it? A great deal. Some of the most brilliant scientists and soldiers have not had children. And their genius and courage is lost with them, she says mournfully. No, it's not. They inspire others to similar heights, if not greater ones. Perhaps, but those best suited to follow them were never given the chance to become. A tragedy, she asserts. OOCS Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 184. The Buzz on the Spin. We've spoken enough, she suddenly says, rising up. Harold doesn't bother to rise. Have we? He asks. We have. You have made your case, and an admittedly good one. But my authority only extends so far. Convincing me further serves neither of us, so I'm kicking this up the ladder with the highest priority. No doubt it will take them time to debate, but we will be seeing you again. And if I slip out of sight when you need me, use this contact code. It will get you in touch with my brother. He has the ear of Admiral Cistern, who in turn has the ear of many, many powerful individuals. Harold says, holding up his communicator. She brings out her own and they tap. They didn't need to be quite that close. I like to be certain. Certain is a good thing to be. He agrees before smirking. But you know, you never gave me your name. I am Harold Armory Jameson of the Undaunted. What beyond unknown alien species, blah blah blah, would you like to be known as? She pauses, then smirks. You really think I'm giving you my real name? A private nickname. Surely something you'd rather hear me say beyond you and hey isn't unreasonable. Velocity. One of my names is Velocity, she admits, and he toasts her with his glass of water. To you then, Velocity. May your entreaties to your superiors be successful, he says, and she smirks before picking up her own glass for the first time and clinking them together. May they be successful indeed, she says before putting the water down, then vanishing in a recall teleport. So she knows about that bit of human culture, or her own people have something similar. Either way, interesting, Harold notes before signaling for a waitress so he can get the leftovers to go. While I can see the appeal of your religion, ma'am, I think I've seen enough for now. Unless there's some other great mystery or truth you'd like to tell me of. A pity. But the message doesn't reach all, not always. In the end, though, truth will out. Although, you are heading to speak to the Order of Everbrith next, right? We are. Observer Wu hedges, unsure where she's going. Oh, nothing to worry about. Just let her know that I've given her the privilege into explaining the cycle of Gravid resurgence. And that is? I'm letting them have the pleasure. Anything more on the Orthodox Gravid faith? You're free to spend time in our church, of course, but I do need to get back to brushing up on tonight's sermon. How often do you have them? Thrice weekly and thrice on those days. It accommodates all the differing schedules of work, travel, and of course special sleeping patterns. Not perfectly, of course, but well enough that there is maybe only 1 or 2 calls for a special service outside of normal hours. Well, that's good to hear you have it so well thought out, Observer Wu says before smiling gently. May I assume that this Gravid resurgence is a game changer? I'm leaving it for her. After all, the conservative Gravids in the Order of Everbirth both will want to have their say. What's the difference between the two? Well, the Order of Everbirth is mostly about sheer number of children, and the conservative Gravids are more focused on the role of the husband, how he is to be protected, loved, and kept safe. They might give you some trouble. I thought that they were the same denomination with 2 names? Patros asks. They're close, very close, and there's a lot of crossover. But they're technically different. They do use the same temple, though. They just rotate days as to who's praying or preaching at the time. Which leads to a good question. What do Gravids pray to exactly? Is there a god, or is it just some form of meditation upon the Gravid truth? That depends entirely upon the denomination. The Gravid faith was born in the wake of... No, I'll leave the pleasure to Mother Clapperclaw or Mother Arfallen. Perhaps both if you're lucky. They're wonderful women. Granted, Clapperclaw is likely to want you boys all safe and comfortable, whereas Arfallen rarely goes 5 minutes without gushing about her little girls. It's cute, she says. Oh my goodness, for some reason I've spoken to 2 high priestesses without learning their names. How did I even do that? Observer Wu demands. Her name is Mother Shanks. Earlier you spoke to Mother Cyberblade, Harold calls out from the entrance before walking in. And speaking of, greetings, Mother Shanks. A pleasure to meet you. The pleasure is mine, young man. Although I must ask, with 4 men with so small an escort rising to 5 things, aren't looking quite so good for you if you seek to speak to Mother Clapperclaw and Mother Arfallen. They might try to detain you for your own safety. The lovely ladies of the group are my wives, actually. So we have 4 unattached men. 1 is station staff, so I assume he can slip out. Even without his gifts of stealth, Observer Wu is married, though his beloved is back on the homeworld. I cannot speak for his bodyguards, though. I suppose 2 unattached men surrounded by friends and family is a lot easier for them to swallow. Although I do suggest you get at least a few more women to act as escort. Either way, though, you're safe in this section, so I have little, if anything, to complain about. Best of luck now. Mother Shanks bids them. It's a clear dismissal, but it's delivered in such a cheerful tone that it feels odd. So did things too well with our infiltrator? Are we getting a new sister wife? Jiria teases. Yes, and maybe she's going to speak to her higher-ups to try and get them to calm down. Or at least talk to the undaunted. And I do think I made a good impression on her. I got a name out of her willingly, which means she's very comfortable around me for an infiltrator. So who knows? I wonder if his dick in her would still be visible. Uma considers, and most of the group misses a step at the sheer what-the-fuckery of the statement, as Harold chuckles. Well, let me keep working at it, and we might very well find out, Harold says. Huh, any hatchlings from that? I wonder if it's possible to breed in naturally invisible war forms. It so rarely holds true with Cloaken being brought in. Would this new species be the secret sauce? Uma considers. Maybe. I don't think right now is the right time to consider eugenics, though. First, we need to make sure there is something other than hostile and hiding. Observer Wu remarks. It's not eugenics, it's about bringing in the best of the best to the bloodline so we get the strongest possible warriors born. Uma protests. That's eugenics. Isn't that more stopping the wrong people from breeding than encouraging the right ones to breed? Uma asks. Partially. Yeah, no. We need computer programmers and farmers and other boring things to get to the exciting job of fighting. I know that. I'm not dumb. Duh, Uma says as they leave the church entirely, and Patras points down the way to the shared conservative and Everbirth temple. I suppose that was the major mistake of, bit of a hot button, that topic. Huh, so you're saying the Nazis, Harold begins. Don't start, Observer Wu warns. I'm just saying that if they were more, this group should be in charge over this group, should be the only one, then they'd probably not be so reviled. We're missing something, Patras notes. About a century ago, there was a major conflict. The losing side did some pretty heinous things and have been thoroughly vilified by history. What I'm saying is that if they were less horrible, they would not be so vilified. They'd still have been wrong, mind you, but they'd be less despised. Be that as it may, they are still thoroughly despised, and for good reason, and you are going to stop this, Mr. Jameson. Fine, fine. It is a provocative topic, even if the history surrounding them is actually quite fascinating and glossed over so often for pursuit of decrying their leaders as evil and the people as fools if they're not monsters for failing to oppose it. Mr. Jameson, stop! Observer Wu commands him. He puts up his hands in surrender. Good. Uma sidles up beside Harold. She leans in to whisper, what's so bad about these guys? Death camps, broken treaties, horrible experimentation, and more. They basically went down a checklist on how to be hated and reviled by history. Harold whispers back, oh, and what's so fascinating about them? The average one was just some average person, which says all sorts of horrible things about a psychology. Couple that to the fact that they did make legitimate advances in medicine that no one wants to admit, and the sheer raving mess that was the build-up to them, and you have a drama among dramas. Except it was real. How crazy did it get? We have video of one of their most well-known leaders twitching and fidgeting in public in a way that suggests he's on high-grade narcotics and stimulants. Whoa, must have been a weird time, Uma says. That's one way of putting it, Harold says. People are also really touchy on the subject due to the Nazis being one of the most pure evil organizations to ever exist. But the word is being used as an insult or accusation so often that it's in a state of flux almost. An insult, but if the wrong kind of person is calling you it, it's a reflection of their own immaturity and short-sightedness. Sounds complicated. Pretty simple in the middle of it, but from the outside looking in, it's a tangled mess. Like most big historical moments, they're only neat and tidy from one side, Harold says. Is that something you got from Herbert or from all the human historical reading you've been doing? A bit of both. Him being a spy means he has to see criminals and other bad guys when they're more person than monster. But he's never been a big student of history, me. Openly hate reading that stuff, but do it anyways to be different, she says, and he nods ruefully. That's not the healthiest, she says, and he sighs. I know. I fully intend to learn to love it, he says, and she gives him a two-finger poke in the side of the head in irritation. No, bad husband, no forcing yourself to like something. She scolds him. But I'm undaunted. I should like what I want to like and... No, she says, poking him in the side of the head again. Your nails are sharp. They're claws. And of course they're sharp, you goof. Uma scolds him with another poke. This time he doesn't take it and dips his head forward to dodge. She tries poking again, and he pulls his head back. This quickly devolves into an incredibly childish scene as she keeps trying to poke him, and he keeps dodging. One of the most powerful warriors humanity ever produced, a man who could eat the heart of Lu Bu in his prime with his bare hands. It would take Sun Wukong to teach him humility, and he acts like a damn child. Observer Wu bemoans. Oh, come on, it's not like being strong or able to kill suddenly shuts off certain wants or needs. Harold replies, no, but I would expect a bit more decorum. Sir, yes, sir. Captain, I think your first mission as a ship captain has taken an unexpected turn, her commanding officer says, and she says nothing. You were sent to observe alone. What happened? Sir, you ordered me to observe an entity capable of observing us. There was no reasonable way to remain near this entity without being exposed. When full exposure occurred, I attempted a different form of stealth personally and was discovered in moments. But rather than hostilities, I had negotiations open to me instead. Does he know anything? Sir, I took the time to do some research into Target Mirror. More clearly, I took the time to research the individual he was not only cloned from, but openly admits to having a mental copy of, meaning he is as capable as this individual. To that end, I feel lucky I haven't ended up completely compromised. They have demonstrated on record, and during my talk with them, the capacity to suss out information at a truly frightening pace, seemingly plucking knowledge from the simple fact it exists. They learn from my deflections, from my outright lies, and almost ironically, they learn the least from what I openly confirmed, which is baffling. But it is what happened. Couple that with his extreme combat abilities and admitted bloodlust. Velocity gives a sign of dejection and confusion. We cannot operate under standard procedure in his presence, and there's no telling how many more individuals like this are within the Undaunted. And due to their loose leash protocols, there's no telling where such individuals might end up. Add their ravenous recruitment rate and the sheer disdain they seem to have for avoiding conflict, and we have a serious threat. Disdain for avoiding conflict? Despite your report outright stating he's trying to play peacemaker between us and the Apuk? Sir, I believe his primary goal in preventing conflict between ourselves and others is ironically because he would find it more difficult to talk us down and reason with us. That's insane. Sir, they're aliens. They do not think rationally. OOCS Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 185. The Buzz on the Spin. Oh, greetings, so many young men and older ones. Might I inquire as to why you're here? You are clearly not followers of the Gravid faith. Clearly, the seemingly normal-looking woman states. Then she rises up and up, revealing a massive lobster for a lower body. Because, of course, lobster centaurs are a thing. For some reason, though, despite it being downright normal compared to a lot of the strangeness he has seen, Observer Wu is briefly stunned. You are Mother Clapperclaw, correct? Harold asks. I am. Is there something that I can do for you? She asks, and then a moment later, Observer Wu regains himself. Yes, ma'am. My apologies. It's been a day and a half already, and I have more to do. I am Observer Wu from Earth. I would like to hear from you about the Gravid faith. I've spoken to Mother Shanks and Cyberblade previously. I was also told by Mother Shanks to ask either you or Mother Arfalin about what Gravid resurgence is. Ah, well, Mother Arfalin is in the bathroom, actually. We share this temple between our denominations and often help one another in our intentions and, please take a seat and sir, have you been eating right? She cuts herself off, looking right at Harold. I eat 3 to 4 times as much as anyone around me. I just also happen to be extremely active, so I burn through the calories nearly as quickly as I take them in, he says. Oh, doing what? A great many things. Don't worry about me. I'm here mostly as support for Observer Wu. It may be best for you to just ignore me, Harold says. Very well, she says before turning to Observer Wu. Now then, Mr. Wu, I will wait until our fallen has returned so we can both explain what a Gravid resurgence is. Until then, I will explain what it means to be a conservative Gravid. I trust you have an understanding what the Gravid truth is. The observation that there must be another generation for life to continue and just how important it is. The differences between branches can be boiled down to a polite argument on the best way to assure this truth is respected. Observer Wu says, and she nods. Very good. Mother Cyberblade and her followers ascribe to the belief that tragedy is an inherent part of the galaxy, and they work to alleviate it and give praise to those who stand against the chaos, while also preserving and guiding the lives of the innocent. Protection and adoption. Mother Shanks is of the belief that there is nothing that one should hold more sacred than their own bloodline, and it is to be preserved, protected, and continued, a sacred duty and trust. Motherhood and teaching a few immensely precious children. The truths that conservative and ever-birthers follow pairs together. For you see, I am a conservative Gravid. I believe that the rarest component to our families must be protected, must be preserved, and that there is great purpose in their existence. Are you referring to men? Observer Wu asks. I am. The time it takes for a woman to give birth varies from species to species. But the time it takes for a man to impregnate them is short, minutes at a time, she says, and there's some snorting. Yes, I know. A few minutes only? I understand. I'm not talking about spending time enjoying your partner. I'm talking about impregnation, not even making love or having sex or fucking. I'm talking about the simple act of fertilizing the eggs, not the immense amount of pleasure or entertainment that can also be performed at the same time, Mother Clapperclaw says. Then she frowns and looks away. Is something wrong, madam? Just remembering when my teacher and dear friend taught me this herself, Mother Clapperclaw says with a sigh. What happened? She was murdered, nightmarishly so, and in public. Some of our greatest local warriors were subverted by an outside party and executed her mid-ceremony. The perpetrator was tracked down and killed, primarily by humans. But the final blow was struck by Miss Yzma in Sector 7. I see. I don't wish to badger you, madam, but I do need to know things more clearly. I had sensed a great deal of reluctance on the part of the Undaunted to approach Gravid sex, and I'm trying to understand why. That's simple enough. No matter what message you give, those who are prone to terrible actions will do terrible things. To say nothing of the naturally zealous who can and will take anything out of context. What many of the pushier girls forget is that this is a faith, and it is only in arrangement systems that the Gravid faith is ever a matter of law. And arrangement systems are the result of Gravid resurgences. But what does a conservative Gravid mean to me as a man? Observer Wu asks. It means you are safe. I will keep you safe. It is my duty to keep you safe. But you are not my prisoner. I am not your jailer, and if you want to leave, the only time I am obligated to stop you is if you're leaving to rot on the streets or walk into certain death. My sons and my husband, both I protect and provide for. They are at home, they are safe, and through them I have many children and grandchildren. And what if your husband or sons want to leave, to go out and do things outside the home? They're not my prisoners. They are my husband and sons. My husband trades on several different stock markets. He's teaching my sons the art of investment. But I am what is protecting them. I am conserving them, keeping them alive, because my husband is the source of my sons and daughters. My sons continue my line exponentially. And your daughters? They continue my line as well. But the fact of the matter is, I will always have more daughters than sons. It is unfair, but it is life. It's a very odd matter of the galaxy, Observer Wu notes. It is not present in animals or plants, but when they cross over to being as people, the populations swing hard in favor of females. It's the axiom. The actual tipping points aren't known, or perhaps it's a pattern built into most life. The cause isn't known, not truly, but the effect is plain. Daughters are born far more often than sons, and tragically, a simple law of finances emerges. Scarcity equals value. That's not quite what the law is, Observer Wu says. What law? I do beg your pardon. I appear to have missed most of this conversation. A new voice says as an Alfar woman walks in from the left side. In her arms is a resting baby, clad in swaddling cloth. From the looks of how chubby the child is, they must be well fed. Oh, Arfallen, this is Observer Wu from Earth. He's going around to learn about religions of the galaxy, and he's learning of the Gravid faith. Mother Cyberblade and Mother Shanks have already spoken to him, but he needs to know about Gravid resurgences, and I wanted to make sure you were here to cover anything I might miss about them. Of course, I see no problem with that. Incidentally, I have been looking for a human name to potentially name this young man. Do you have any suggestions? Mother Arfallen asks as she walks up and has a seat nearby, seemingly at total peace with the world as her baby boy lightly snores. If you're looking for currently relevant names, then Garfield, Philip, or Herbert might suit you, Harold advises. If you want more religiously historical, then Gabriel, Matthew, and James are good names. Of course, they're all just from one culture of many. There's a great deal to choose from. Thank you, Mother Arfallen says before smiling down at her son. Now, what part have I walked in on? Something about a law? Oh, I was describing the protectiveness of conservative Gravids by citing the law of supply and demand, she says. I had forgotten the proper term for it for a moment, so I more described it, and he was about to correct me. Ah, I see. How is it hard to understand? If there are few men, then they should be protected. It's only reasonable, Mother Arfallen says. My little one here will want for nothing and know no fear or pain. Then how will he know victory? Jiria asks. How will he know what he can do if it's all handed to him? Jiria, while excellent questions, this isn't the time. But I know. Our children will not be like that. They'll be whacking each other with sticks before turning 5, Harold remarks. Sticks? Oldest weapon known. Pick up stick and bonk things, also in the hand of a child, they're nearly harmless, Harold remarks. Nearly? Mother Arfallen asks in distress. Yes, nearly. Did you know that if you don't simulate at least a moderate wind on greenhouse-grown trees, they grow so weak that they're useless for lumber? A baby is not a tree. Putting aside the plant-based species, no, they're not, but they're both living things. And there is something there, something within a creature, that if not tested gutters and dies. Jiria states, conflict and battle test and push a person to... A kiss from Harold stops her. Anyways, putting aside parenting styles and such, you want to know about Gravid resurgence, right? Mother Arfallen asks. Well, it is an event, sometimes created through war, or natural disaster, or a simple accident. An event destabilizes a region and puts its future into uncertainty and its survival in doubt. That is when the Gravid faith experiences a resurgence. We provide support and certainty in confusing and terrifying times. Our ways, while perhaps odd from the outside in, reinforce and repair the foundations of society. And then methods you approve of get baked into law, creating arrangement systems, where it's criminal for men to not be mass married by 100 to 1, Observer Wu says. Yes, they're never meant to be a punishment. The idea is that society has found itself frail and vulnerable. And where's the weakest point? What is it that needs to not only be protected, but put to proper use? Mother Arfallen asked before holding up her son for all to see. It is in our men, so few, so precious, so very much coddled to keep them safe because of their rarity. This beautiful child will one day go on to sow life and love within this galaxy like a farmer sows crops. His fruit shall be the fruit of life itself, and in doing so a piece of me, bound within him, becomes immortal. Passed down and continued from mother to daughter. Father to son. What if that's not what he wants, though? What if his heart and soul yearns for another path? What if he seeks to paint instead and obsesses over oil and canvas? Or what if his mind is drawn to the contents of beakers and vials, seeking cures to as yet untold sickness? Jiria asks out loud, and Observer Wu looks back. Her face paint is smudged to show she just now broke away from a very intense kiss. And Harold, who has some of that face paint smeared on himself now, shrugs. Then that will be his path. But he will also be a father, a sacred and beautiful thing. An ender of conflict, the mediator of his family, and perhaps the watcher of their finances. And if he wants to protect or attack, what if your son finds joy and obsession in combat, in breaking his opponents with his fists and axioms? You are a devastation, are you not? Mother Arfallen asks. Miss, are you compromised in your opinion? Compromised? No. Clear-headed after what happened to my grandfather? Yes, he never gave me the whole story, but he was drowning in a Gravid system. It wasn't until his 4th century that he was even willing to entertain having a child. You're welcome, Mother Arfallen says. What? It was not intentional, but the need to push out and find his freedom tested and made your grandfather strong. Which means he follows your philosophy, And as a grandfather, that means he has had children who have had children. He followed our ways as well, resulting in you. You are welcome, young lady, Mother McFarlane says, and Yuria slithers right up to her in a fury. Then is stunned when the high priestess hands her unnamed newborn son to her. What? Why? Are you still angry? Mother McFarlane asks. Not while holding a baby. I'm not a monster. Then hold on to him as I say this, Mother McFarlane says gently, placing a hand on Jiria's head. I am sorry that the Gravid faith was not the nourishment your grandfather needed to grow. But I am not sorry that you have a grandfather, and I will never apologize for him using whatever lessons he learned from us to create whichever parent he ties back to, and, in turn, you. She now places her hands on either of Jiria's shoulders and smiles. Life is a blessing, and every life we create is a unique blessing as well. The child you hold in your arms, the one beginning to grow within you, me, everyone in this room. The eggs being slowly incubated in the back. All of us, we are all blessings upon the galaxy, capable of healing or damning it as we so choose. But first, we must be. Ah, so that's the core truth of the Order of Everbirth. Observer Wu notes. The first choice we all have is to be or be not. We here have all chosen to be. It seems rather unfair to not give that choice to others, doesn't it? Mother McFarlane asks.